Here we go with another Mormon story, and it's probably not going to be any different than anything else, but it's interesting. I skimmed it real quick, so I don't even know everything that's in it, and it's quite a long one for Daily Mail. How the Mormon Church protects itself from pedophile claims. Daughter abused by her bishop father. Her bishop father was paid 300K, but is speaking out as he remains working as a dentist with access to children. This in the family thing, I'm just thinking it's all extraordinarily common to minor to major. This one, okay, so Chelsea Goodridge says her father was a Mormon bishop, repeatedly abused her as a child, and she was paid 300K by the church, but is now speaking out. It comes as DailyMail.com revealed an extensive cover-up of sexual abuse by figures in the church. Daily Mail did this. Like somebody over here who did this. Um, Isabel Stanley. All right, props to Isabel. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know who did it. Okay, a woman who claimed she was sexually abused by her bishop's father was paid 300K by the Mormon Church is now speaking out to keep others safe. See, the historical thing on this and why there's so many of these people around. I keep talking about it. I don't care if I get in trouble, like whatever. I get in trouble all the time. Okay, look, there's nothing being done right to the perpetrator, so they're never gonna. There's no chance in hell for them to change, and they don't change because even by the professional standards, they have not found a cure for this problem. Um, but if the environment is not allowing a healthy environment to correct those things, right? They're going to keep going. So it's kind of just an enabling thing to somebody that already has like a PD, right? So it's like this thing. And then I was talking about the prison thing. I go, no, the prison thing is really bad because we shouldn't be wanting it set up like that because it's not a thing where when they get thrown in, they're actually going through some, thing to help correct them. And even if they are, let's just say that they are on some of these things, um, that it's not fixable. So that's why we have all these ones, and they just let this one out, and then he's a serial killer. I mean, it's like uh. And those things, as I was saying, are not something that happens in adulthood. It's something from childhood, and then they don't tackle it properly. And the only time I said you could probably tackle it is in their childhood. That's probably the only time you can correct that is when you're seeing some of those signs. But even then it's questionable because we haven't really done this. And so, but I'm seeing this thing right there from the words and the mouths of these socios all the time where there's this area where it's like, well, if something came in and disrupted that situation, then yeah, you may have corrected that. But once they get into adulthood, it's kind of a hardwired thing and there's no cure. Now they'll sit there and tell you, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that again. They're great at doing that all the time. And even if they don't do it again, one of the things that I've noticed from them throughout this whole time is that they don't take accountability for what they did. They do not see that they did something wrong. They're like, yeah, whatever they say. Or they come out and they'll say like, oh, she lied or he lied or what, whatever the thing is. So they don't take the accountability for themselves for doing something like that, which is a problem because they can further do some things and never take responsibility. And second, that they minimize all these violent crimes. And so, yes, that matters because then when they do those things, or they'll do them because they don't see anything wrong with them, and they're not a big deal, right? And also, they'll use that towards even voting, like it matters and things like that. Just things that you wouldn't think of, maybe generally. Like if it's something like, okay, we're pro raping some women today, and they're going to be right on top of it. They don't see the problems with the hate crimes and they minimize them and stuff like that. That's a complex topic. But anyways, yeah, and then women have been taught to kind of just put up with it. And yeah, and then there's some variations of it being flip-flop, right? And that's just from a series of all this. Anyways, And the American language has a tank of degrading female language, mostly when they're talking to males and male victims of that violence. Yeah, it's like degrade women to make it okay for you. It's a subconscious thing. It's just hardwired because you were taught as a kid to talk like that. It is. It's so, and that's really the thing about that disorder there, is that those things are hardwired, and so the way that they think, and then they didn't develop right, right? They didn't develop right. Like, how are they going to develop as an adult when they missed it in their childhood? Like, there's a thing there. There's a thing there, you guys. And so this father, more than likely, like I could say this without even going through the story yet, was abused as a kid, and then at that time, depending on his age, the laws were all legal to rape everybody and all this stuff and kids, and then they kept it silent, right? Because they didn't even talk about rape. So for anybody that's missed all the topics on this thing, so yeah, and it's not just from the Mormon church. I don't, it just is another story that popped up. And actually, it wasn't even in Google. I was looking at a different thing on Daily, and I saw it on the side, and I was like, wait a minute. It says, she says he climbed into her bed in a state of arousal on multiple occasions during her childhood. See, these are all the things that kids think is normal, because you shouldn't think, like, they have this thing where they're like, you shouldn't think that your parent would ever do anything like that to their own kid. That's disgusting. And yeah, it's a uncomfortable topic, but as I've been going through all this, I've been noticing this being more common than originally thought, because a lot of the victims weren't coming out and talking. So those victims are hardcore messed up now, because the reason being is because it wasn't talked about, and so then when they talked about it, people just like didn't want to think about it, and then they didn't have a support team, to go, the way you're thinking about this is wrong, or maybe the way you're thinking about this is unhealthy, and that's not correct, and they may say something that's not purposeful, but it's just part of the abuse, and I still hear people going on like that, even saying I'm a victim thing. um she told Mormon church leaders, now she says they paid her 300K to settle potential claims and to delete her recordings of meeting about the abuse. Her father is still a free man working as a dentist in Idaho. I know that weird connection with Utah and Idaho. And I had a friend that took off there to Idaho, and she started emailing me. Like, we were both Christian, right? You would think it would be me being like this, but it totally wasn't. And she emailed me. I talked to her, oh God, like maybe over 10 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago. I don't know, something like that. And I was catching up with some people that I had gone to school with. And all of a sudden, these people turned out to be these like hardcore Christian people, like just like beyond. And then I went trying to search for her recently, just because of all the stories in those areas. And I was like kind of curious, like what the heck happened? And I can't find her now. The only thing I could think of is maybe she got married and then the whole last name changed. And then I don't know. I don't know. I lost contact with her. I just want to see if she was okay. She's really nice, but I don't know. But those emails were weird. Like her and this other girl you wouldn't even think would be like that. And then she was being really ultra religious. And I was like, what is going on with those? Like, honestly, in school, you probably would have sat there and go, oh, I'm going to be the one that does that. No. Like for a hot minute till all the abuses happened, I was like, oh yeah, I lost my faith. Okay, so here we go with this. Right now, my main concern continues to be other children, she said. Yeah, so her story comes as they exposed significant abuses in the church where leaders allegedly covered up years of rampant sexual abuse and incest. Yeah, the incest thing I think is just part of the rapist thing. I just do, because it's like, how could you hold, you can't hold, like, you have to think about this. So you hold an ideology or an idea that raping people is fine against your will and everything. So why would you all of a sudden have this uh opposite thinking at home about your own kids? Like, it wouldn't make any sense, because you're teaching it outside of the home. So wouldn't you be teaching that in the home too? Like there's a thing to it, and it's just those are areas where I just didn't go there until more recently as we're running into more and more of these cases. Mostly with that Menendez case, dude. That case right there. Now ever since that case, I keep seeing these cases like it. And not just they don't say it's including sexual abuse, but it's like general child abuse, and then they're killing their parents. And I'm like, yeah, there's something to this crap, dude, because who randomly does this stuff? I think for the most part something else inside the home because nobody talks about what happens inside the home. And yeah, are they sociopaths? Probably because of the abuse. But I mean, it's not a thing we're okaying murder, but it's on a line of self defense. You know, there's a thing to it. It's such a that topic right there. I don't know, but I am looking at it because I'm like, yeah, I know how they're created. So then they're all of a sudden like that, and then their self-defense thing is to remove them. I mean, something, because nobody's came in to help them, right? And they weren't educated enough to, go outside a lot of those situations. There's a lot in that. It's just, it's all this. It says more than a dozen current and former members of the church have come forward with shocking claims of culture of cover-up, defying leaders who are alleged to silence and threaten those who speak out. In the spring of 2015, Chelsea Goodridge, then 29-year-old graduate student in psychology, like psychology, living in Southern California, and she began to confront disturbing memories. I know, is it just a thing that we all get abused and then we're like all into this like whole thing about it? Because I was like, I'm in particular this one thing that would have caused her dad to do it. Because if I start going into the whole field of like every other mental illness, it's too much for me. So it's like I'm better specialized in a single area where I'm looking at that specific thing that's causing the other stuff that they're doing. So I don't know. That's just my thing because I got victimized so many times by these people that, and not just men. There's been a few females in this. So yeah, the background. So I was getting the history from them, particularly like in person. And then it's just putting that stuff together and then going back and forth from past to now and what's going on and what people are saying, what's in society, what was in the environments there, and what were the things that cause these additional things. So you don't need to go to school for that, but you do need to be really sharp on what was going on at the time and then how people came out, and then also following up on how people came out. That's another thing. Mostly the people that you knew, and the hindsight people that are like, oh yeah, that person was totally crazy and they did this thing, or me saying these people were such bullies and then they're still bullies, right? It's like 30, 40 years, you go into it, it's like that. Something that the psychologist, like if you go into the therapist, like they know, because when they go in, they don't tell them all that. Are you crazy? They sit there and be like, I was a good kid and, yeah, this thing. And it's like, oh no, wait, let me interject here. While her peers dated and created lasting relationships, she's filled with anxiety and dread at the prospect. Instead of wanting to have a relationship, I just remember feeling terror and confusion and kind of disgust like all at once about it. And her memories included several occasions when her father slipped into her bed at night in their house in the mountain home, Idaho, to spoon her while he was aroused, pushing himself against her backside. Yeah, it's like I told you they kept coming to our work and doing this crap. I was like, just out of nowhere to strangers, you guys. Thousands of it. Thousands. We're not talking a few people. Thousands of them just walking into a public workplace and trying to pull this crap. It was insane. I'm sitting there. I mean, because my jobs prior to that was just, I worked in a showroom, for a pipe and supply company. It sold bathroom fixtures and spas and that type of stuff. And so there was no human interaction in that way. And then you go work as even in the restaurants, the waitresses, like these guys just come in, they'll grab you and stuff. It's like, what the hell? And they're most of them were married. I was like, yeah, we got thousands of assaults. I mean, it isn't even, that's not an exaggeration. That's the truth of it. That's how they think of us. Yeah, so if her father's doing that there, guess what he's gonna do when he goes to a place like where I worked, right? He's gonna grab him. And he's gonna see no issue with it. That's the truth of it with these dads. That's why it's like, okay, now I'm actually worried. Even more so because I didn't think of it in that way before. But I did realize it with the perpetrator that the other person was okaying those people around kids. And I'm like, no, you just got told that these people did this to a kid. So why would you risk your own kids to have this person around your children? You know what I mean? So it was there. It's just, I don't know. I guess maybe it was just sort of like you're not thinking every single person is this idiotic. But yeah, apparently so. So then it says her father was charged in relation to her allegations, but pled guilty only to a drug-related charge in a separate case. On one occasion, when she was 9, she said her father had apologized to her for being aroused while they were playing in the family swimming pool and told her not to tell her mother. Ah. Now, I don't know if, I hope to God my dad didn't have anything like that. If that happened, I didn't even know it. See, and you just, I don't know. Like, I was thinking about all these things. I'm like, did I miss anything? Is it possible? I know that his actions, though, were pretty effed up. But I don't recall anything of that nature. I was always in the swimming pool, you guys. Always. I was like, always. This is the last similar incident Chelsea recalls occurred during a school field trip to DC, where her father admits he climbed into her bed with her in a state of arousal and slipped close behind her. Her dad admitted to this action during a recorded conversation. Like, who the hell's gonna make that up? That's the story you don't even want to tell. Like, honest to God, so I couldn't even imagine. Like, if somebody told me this, I probably wouldn't think twice about it. Unless I find out they have a history of pathologically lying about things, but even then, it could be the sign of that's why they're like that. While grappling with her memories, Chelsea met a Mormon friend she came to trust and told them about her experiences. Her new friend told her that her father, Paul, was a high church official who often dealt with sexual abuse complaints, suggesting Chelsea contact him. So she believed Rating's main responsibility was to aid victims, but at about that time, he was deeply involved in defending the church in a highly publicized West Virginia child sex abuse lawsuit. Several Mormon families have accused the church of allowing a Mormon sex abuser, Christopher Michael Jensen, to babysit for their children whom he allegedly abused. Jensen was sentenced to serve 35 to 75 years in prison after he was found guilty of abusing 2 of the children. Okay, so that Ritting made sworn statements in that case, which were sealed by a judge and obtained by the AP, describing the management of the secretive church helpline, a phone number set up by the church for bishops to report instances of child sexual abuse. And I recall reading through that before. Was that was in the, wasn't that in the case with the therapist guy where he abused the boys? Where they went to the, wasn't it like a bishop and then they had a line for them to talk, like something weird. This came up somewhere. Church officials say that they don't keep any records of the reports to the helpline. See, all this stuff is just the human trafficking hotline. This hotline, every hotline is garbage, mostly if it's ran by government or obviously a religious group. Okay, so it says also revealed the lengths to which the church goes to ensure confidentiality for Mormon perpetrators who make spiritual confessions. Their confessions don't mean anything. They're a bunch of rapists, so yeah, see, that's how come they're coming out that way. That's exactly, and they're just reoffending and then on their kids, and then the kids turn out to be offenders or highly emotionally messed up because of the situation, right? Disciplinary proceedings are subject to the highest confidentiality possible. If members had any concerns that their disciplinary files could be read by a secular judge of the regular world, they're not really secular. Can we have a talk about these judges? They're not really secular, but they're Christian for the most part. They may not be Mormon, but they're definitely, somebody you guys would probably agree with each other. Or attorneys, or be presented to a jury as evidence in a public trial because their willingness to confess and repent and for their souls to be saved would be seriously compromised. Okay. Religion is bad. Okay, so they said they did not respond to, he did not respond to telephone calls or an email with a list of questions. After meeting Retine's daughter, Chelsea traveled with her to Salt Lake City and met Paul while staying at the family home. Audio recordings of the meeting over the coming years show how Retine, despite expressing concern for what he called John's significant sexual transgression, would employ the risk management playbook that has helped the church keep child sexual abuse cases secret. In particular, oh, and I consider these violent crimes, violent offenders, by the way. So that's another thing about the presentation of this. So they're violent offenders, and these are the cases that I believe, mostly when they're a kid, I believe they should be opened up. They need to start opening those up. I was like, you guys will freak the hell out if you see how many kids are violent offenders and they're still violent offenders today, and they've been getting passes, and then you would actually put two and two together where like you were dating some guy and then he was all violent. Then if you go back to the kid case, that's totally under wraps, right? You don't know anything about it. You'll see this pattern of behavior that was from way back when, and they may not have been arrested ever because they keep getting, passed off. So that was in one of my cases, and that's what I was talking about. And another thing about the violent offender thing, they put a guy that's a violent offender on probation towards women, and then I got assaulted, and there was no way for me to know that the landlord, which was him, was a violent offender on females, and I would have never rented from anybody like that. So I didn't know that, and then they let him escape. Right, that was that whole thing. So I was like, yeah, what the hell? So we're not even. There's no heads up on it. You don't know about it, and that needs to change like big time. It was just crazy to me. They're like, we're going to put you on probation even though you beat up women all the time. And then, like, I have no idea. And then all of a sudden, one day, he just makes up something and then he's like, and then he wants to go beat me up. It's like, yeah, that's not how normal people act. Like, yeah. And then, yeah, that thing happened. So it says, in particular, the church would discourage a bishop, Michael Miller, who had heard confessions from John about the abuse from testifying. The city, they cited a law that exempts clergy from having to divulge information about child sex abuse that is gleaned in a confession. Okay. Without Miller's testimony, prosecutors dropped the charges, telling Lorraine that her impending divorce and the years that have passed since Chelsea's alleged abuse might prejudice jurors. Reading also offered hundreds of thousands of dollars in exchange for a confidentiality agreement and a pledge by Chelsea and Lorraine to destroy their recordings of the meeting that they had made at the recommendation of an attorney with Reading knowledge. I know. It's all about it, dude. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. That's what they've been doing. Okay, so in 2015, Chelsea didn't feel ready to discuss her memories and kept them to herself, she said, but she eventually told her mother. I can't. I'm just trying to place myself in her shoes because I don't know. I would never want to talk about it. Like that's just me. That one, I don't know. I mean, maybe I would have eventually, but I don't know. It's just that's one of those ones where I can see where kids are literally not coming out going, "Hey, this happened to me," like this particular thing. And when Lorraine Goodridge confronted her husband in the Idaho home in July of 2015, John confirmed becoming aroused while around his daughter, but denied any direct sexual contact, according to recordings of the conversations. Oh, and guess who's muting all the words like rape and all these other things? It's all these people. I was like, yeah, the more that kids don't know, because it happened to kids, right? So kids should know about it, right? So they could tell somebody like right away, right? And then they did hear, but it's just a cover up. But why would you mute these words? It's psychotic. I don't know who's for this. We shouldn't be talking like it's 1985. Because I do remember feeling like we're walking on eggshells in 1985. We're not doing that. No. Like that's what I'm feeling like. That because it's like I can't say what I need to say like about like this conversation here. I'll type something in like in relation to the story and then I get busted. I'm like, that's awesome. I was like, it's making me seem like this like really bad person. I was like, it's not my fault that their AI crap is going on like this. It just happened the other day and I'm like, it was something to do with yeah, I mean, I was referencing oxygen because there was a girl on there, and I was like, oh yeah, I was like, yeah, she looks like she's a person that would totally want to kill you. That's what I said, and then it's all boom. It's like you're busted. It thought I was asking to kill people, and I was like, that's insane. And yeah, so I sent him a thing saying I did not. I'm actually I'm educating on these people because that girl ultimately, went and killed somebody. I go, she didn't look right. I go, I don't know what the other problem is with her, but she didn't look right in the photos that they were showing. So I was like, that could be autism. That could be something else. That could be an additional thing that she had. But obviously somebody didn't connect there in that family. And then she killed her mom. Like it was that thing. And I was like, she looked crazy though at 19 there. Yeah. I was like, something in the eyes, though. I was like, it's that. Because I think if you just remove the eyes and put like these really friendly eyes on somebody, they wouldn't look so threatening, right? Yeah, I was like, there's something about that. I don't know. But it's something about their brain activity. But, yeah, no. Um, didn't do that, but they were claiming I was promoting to kill people. I was like, awesome. Never. I have promoted to defend yourself, which they try to say that they do, but then if you actually do defend yourself, then it turns into you're a murderer. Okay, so yeah, it turns into that thing, but the conversation wasn't that. Okay, so the adversary, I'm sure, worked on me. He said, using a Mormon. Oh, wait a minute. In one recording conversation with Chelsea and Lorraine, he blamed the devil. Oh, here we go. Okay, so he blamed the devil for his decision to climb into bed with his 13-year-old daughter after hearing sexual activity in an adjoining hotel room during the trip to Washington. How do you hear that? I mean, it must have been some cheap ass hotel. I don't know. I just whatever, but so that was the reason. He's like, I heard some other people doing that, so I decided to prey on my daughter. Uh-huh, yeah. No. And the devil thing has been their excuse the whole time, is blaming something else other than themselves for making decisions of doing things. And isn't that what a socio does? Yeah, like something else made me do it. Um, are you hearing voices? If you're hearing voices, then you have another issue, but that's the adversary, I'm sure, worked on me using a Mormon term for Satan, and that's when it was going through my mind when I climbed in bed with Chelsea and was really aroused with the intent of spooning and snuggling you, but I didn't. What? Like, what? The adversary, I'm sure, worked on me, he said, using a Mormon term for Satan. And that's when it was going through my mind when I climbed into bed. Okay. With his family and marriage in turmoil, John revealed details of his relationship with Chelsea to visit relatives according to a written statement from the relatives, which was ultimately submitted to authorities. They urged him to go to the police, and when John said he'd rather talk with a Mormon bishop, the Goodridge relatives drove him to the Miller's home, where John made his confession. Less than a year later, in September 1st, 2016, Chelsea and her mother went to Mountain Home Police and played the recording of their conversation with John. The next day, after a nearly 2-hour interview at the police headquarters, the officers arrested him. Nothing happened, John protested as police cuffed him during a video interview obtained by the AP. I'm not ashamed of anything. Here we go. We got the socio here. He's like, I'm not, you're okay. It was then that Chelsea decided to enlist Reading's help and began corresponding with them by email to persuade him to allow Miller to testify against her father. Chelsea and Lorraine also let Reading know that the church officials may have known about John and his own daughter for years. John told them in a conversation that were also recorded that he repented details of his relationship with Chelsea to several local church leaders. They're all down with the dude. Rittens told them that church leaders said they did not recall hearing any such confessions, yeah. They're like, what? We get told this all the time. I mean, are we supposed to remember this guy that's going there? Like, okay, if you're not reacting, it's telling you that those people need to be looked at, right? If you're told this story and your brain is trying to I mean, these are probably bald-faced lies, but you're saying you don't remember it. That would just mean that the information that you obtained when you got it, your brain said it's not important and just brushed it off. Because anything that we've forgotten in life typically is information that's not really relevant or important or necessary to hold on to. The things that we remember the most are things that are bad, right? A lot of things that happened that were really bad, or some things that were really good. You have these great memories of something that had happened, right? But then in the middle of the day, there's a bunch of nonsensical stuff that just doesn't matter. You have conversations with people. This isn't an everyday conversation. So that's how they're responding. Be concerned. Okay, then 10 days after John's arrest in Mountain Home, another woman stepped forward with additional allegations of sex abuse after learning of the case against John. The 53-year-old single mother accused him of having non-consensual sex with her after giving her the drug Halcion. What is that? Okay, a controlled substance John often used to sedate patients during dental procedures. I don't trust these dentists, dude. I had one that was kind of questionable there a long time ago. Questionable. Nothing happened, but questionable. I'm putting it like that. She alleged that nobody ever knocked me out doing dental procedures. I have not allowed that. I have not. She alleged that Goodridge drugged her the previous July after she cut off a sexual relationship with him. As detectives investigated the new allegation, John Goodridge, who is still facing charges in Chelsea's case, called the woman at least 4 times. In conversations she recorded, and which the AP obtained. So, in these conversations, Goodridge asked her to lie to the police while admitting he drugged her. Oh my gosh. Okay, even as he tried to minimize his actions and repeatedly apologize. This is such a sociopath action, let me tell you. It's so calculated. It's like, I'm going to do this thing. This is not accidental. None of these crimes are accidental, and they're not out of ignorance. He does not want to consider himself a certain way, but he's, pre-planning and then perpetrating, and then he's doing this. And then the knockout thing is just, okay, it was fun as heck, but it was wrong, he said in a record. Wow. I was like, wow, here we go. He's like, open. It was fun as heck, but it was wrong, he said in a recording. Just out of principle, it was wrong, and I'm just mad at hell at myself. What? Wow, this guy's dangerous. I mean, he's just out in the... This is where the mask is not even on. He's just like, it was fun as heck. Yep, I enjoy my criminal behavior, but I know, and he's telling you right here, he knows it is wrong. That's the thing with the PD. It isn't that they don't know what they're doing is wrong. They totally do. And he's admitting it. He's like, I know it was wrong, but it was fun as hell. I have fun as hell harming people. That's them. That is really their true brain right there. That's the truest part of that PD right there. Okay, so in 2017, prosecutors dropped charges against Goodridge fathers related to Chelsea's allegation. After it was fun as heck. Okay, that one... 6 months later, a prosecutor in a neighboring county was crafting a plea deal in which he, again, would escape sex crime charges In the end, he pleaded guilty to distribution of controlled substance. And a judge sentenced him to 90 days in jail and 3 years of probation. I think you should get a lot longer for giving somebody some stuff there, dude. You could die from some of this stuff. Gosh. And it's a form of a rapist, right? I'm doing something against your will. That's a thing right there. After the initial meeting with Chelsea and Lorraine, Ridding said the clergy penitent privilege law made it next to impossible for Miller to testify against John. Now, 4 months later, he was back in Haley with an offer. Much had changed for Lorraine and Chelsea in the meantime. They began to feel ostracized by the Mormon community. Miller's wife had even removed them from a local church community sisters email list. Miller had been an advocate for Chelsea. During the first meeting with Ridding, Miller said that John Goodridge, before his excommunication, had tried to backtrack on what he told Miller in confession. John told me one thing and then kind of toned it way down to the stake president, said Miller, referring to a higher ranked church official who oversees several local jurisdictions. He told the stake president, well, that's not a big deal. I go, yeah, it's a big deal. So we know he's lying, and we know he's lying at every level. Reached by phone by the AP, Miller refused to discuss details. It's clergy privilege. If I say anything, John can sue me for millions of dollars. I would let him. I was like, I don't know. Like, there's a certain threats, it depends. Like, it's on principle. But, yeah. Okay, with Ridding in town again, Lorraine and Chelsea first made it clear that they were devastated the prosecutor had dropped the criminal case. Okay, the prosecutor, too bad the bishop couldn't testify. Okay, Ridding sounded surprised. He had not known coming into the meeting that the case was dropped, he said, and he told them the church perhaps could reach out to the prosecutor to help get things restarted. The message to this prosecutor is you've got several pretty clear-cut instances where a sexual predator, has admitted, and then the victims have provided information, but you don't feel any need to protect the general public? Yeah, it's kind of like, nobody else does either. I mean, just the general system, like, it isn't just here. Like, we could just lay this out in the general overall system about this. Like, you don't think you should protect the general public? Like, your violent offender kids, like those things. Yeah, there's a lot. So it's like, she did say that if the bishop could come forward and tell, then we would have had a case. But there's nothing, Lorraine repeated. The prosecutor, Jessica, now works for Pennsylvania's Attorney General's office and did not respond to a request for comment. The AP couldn't determine if the church ever followed up with her about the case. Yeah, I don't trust any of the Attorney General's people either, and in California, for sure, no. There was massive cover-ups of this stuff. It's statewide, and they know what's going on. They knew about the rapist cops. They knew about all those things, and then they played a game with us to go through a system where we're supposed to go and do our own investigations through law enforcement, which they're the problem in it, right? So they're not going to investigate themselves properly, of course not. And the way that they view these crimes on others is okay with them. So no matter what they look at, they just okay the conduct. And then you're supposed to take that and then send it to the Attorney General's office or something like that, the state attorney. And then those people are all pro-rapists and hiding stuff and doing the same thing. So it's basically the same thing. It's just in a different format, like in the Mormonville. And so no matter what, even outside this universe of the religion the religion of the general population is Christianity, right? So basically, if you go into like Utah, it's like all Mormons, right? So everything, like the whole government there is like all Mormon and stuff. So you basically are kind of just stuck to their laws and then all the garbage that they're doing over here. But outside that, it's like all these Christians, so we're stuck to their Christianity bullshit. And then so then you get stuck in the same thing. It's just a different religion, but the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like that we saw the same thing in the Scientology thing, right? It's the same type of structure. The AP couldn't determine if the church ever followed up about the case. Okay, about an hour into the meeting, they changed the subject abruptly. Well, shouldn't we talk about why I'm here? Written as I have authorized up to 300K. The offer stunned Chelsea and Lorraine. Months earlier, Written told them by email that the church was prepared to pay them 90K, an offer the women were considering. No. No. I would. Well, first of all, I wouldn't accept 90K for this crime. And no. Okay. So the payment would be made on the condition that Chelsea and her mother sign an agreement in which they promise never to use Chelsea's story as a basis for a lawsuit against the church, and that they never acknowledge the existence of the settlement. Not for 90K, honey. I was like, not for 90K. And there was another key provision, second paragraph. I'll be interested in your response, Renton said, and review the document with them. The recommendation is that you acknowledge that there's been some recordings made of all of our communications, and that you agree to destroy those recordings within 10 days of signing this. I would never agree to that. I would never in a million years. Nope. Non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, as they're commonly known, have been used frequently by the Mormon Church and other organizations, including the Catholic Church, as well as individuals, to keep sexual abuse allegations secret. In addition to her settlement with the church, Chelsea also settled a lawsuit against her father. In one of their recording conversations, Redding told Chelsea that he could check helpline records used by Miller to report details of John's confession to see whether her father had ever previously confessed to another bishop about abusing her. But in the West Virginia abuse case against the church, Renton gave sworn written testimony in which he said no one at the helpline keeps records. And another ranking church official testified in a case in Arizona that the records are destroyed at the end of each day. In comments to the AP, the church declined to clarify Renton's apparent contradictions about whether the church keeps records on the helpline. Still, at their final meeting, Riding assured Chelsea and Lorraine that the church officials denied hearing John's confession previously to abusing his daughter, a claim the church backed. In its statement to the AP, he urged them to accept the funds the church was offering and sign a non-disclosure agreement promising they would never sue the church. When John Goodridge engaged in abuse or any other criminal or sexual misconduct, he was acting in an individual capacity and not as an agent of the church. While ignoring the fact that Goodridge was a bishop at the time. So accordingly, any damages arising from such misconduct would be a proportion, I don't know, to Mr. Goodridge and not to the church. Chelsea and Lorraine, distanced from the family and church community and struggling financially, accepted his assessment and signed the agreement, which did not prevent Chelsea from telling her story. Early this year, Chelsea decided to share it with the AP. She had tried going to the church for help, and she tried the criminal justice system, but John was free with access to children through his family and dental practice. In a statement, the church said the abuse of a child or any other individual is inexcusable, and that John Goodridge followed his excommunication and has not been readmitted to church membership. Yeah, so I was saying, I go, if I had some awareness of this, then I really don't care what any other victim said, and I would start outing people. So I did out an individual. That was that one. And because of what they said. So it wasn't, now I don't know if he did anything to them outside that situation, but what they said was highly concerning because I had access to a kid. And it was like the first time that like clicked in me, where I was like, oh my God, he's around children and he got close to another kid. And why is he bragging to me about it? It's very bizarre. And so at that point, then this thing started rolling where I was like, I gotta tell somebody. So I started like sending out these things to some other music industry people, and then they ignored me. But then I went to the attorney and told them what they did to me, and then they were just like, oh, typical. That's how the attorney reacted to it. So no, I wouldn't trust even an attorney coming up to me going, yeah, this bullshit, this bullshit, this bullshit. It's like, oh, no, wait. If they're trying to get me to sign something, to say I can never say this or do this after them again, then like there's something else major in it, and then you could go do those things. I would definitely never accept 90K for this crime right there, no. I was going for a lot more for just a housing case, not a sexual crime case. And I seen this actually with LAPD. Oh no, it was the sheriff's department and the DA's office paying off a victim that got raped by a law officer for 150 or 100K or something. I was like, did they really accept that? What kind of garbage attorney did you have? I would fire him. Because that's a life, like it's a lifelong thing. It's not like, oh, a single crime happened here. But it's like the major abuse of power from like law enforcement doing it, and then your pain and suffering from it. And 100K does not go far in California, okay? Mostly after the attorney takes out his, little fee there, and then you're gonna have to do tax, whatever, that thing. It is not, that is not proper. Not for these crimes, no. Your own father in a church, like they're the team, right? It's the church and the father. They're one big team. Onto some little girl. How gross is that? She said she tried the criminal justice system. Well, the criminal justice system is basically a bunch of Christians that believed in raping little girls. So, because if you went into the courthouse, they would have just said you wanted it. Oh, if they started saying this to some incestuous thing, I don't know. They probably have, and I haven't run across that case yet. But they have for everybody else. They're like, oh, you wanted it from that adult male, and you should have known that this adult male is a sociopath that's preying on you and totally manipulated you. That's how they were talking in all these court cases. Almost all of them. That's how they were fighting for the perpetrator. And they were telling little kids this in a courtroom. I'm like, I would not want this to happen to me as a kid and go into the courtroom. I didn't go into the courtroom, not even on my other case. They left me out of it. And then it was my parents battling them, and yeah, all the adults in it, right? And I'm pissed about it because I'm like, no, that case should have been open to the public about that violent kid. It should have been open to the public, because later they do something and they're not even using it in the case. Like, it's like he has a violent history, and it changes your perspective when you understand that this person is a problem. They've had a problem for a long time, and that they're violent, and you don't need to provoke them to be violent, because at this case, that early on case, nobody even had an interaction. None. It wasn't like me and this kid got in a fight. It wasn't even that. It was, this kid is violent and he wanted to go kill somebody at like age 8 or something. And then he just chased me down and did that. And so, then they leave it to the parents to go duke it out. But then what happens to that perpetrator? Nothing. Nothing happened to him. Nothing. They had to pay out money to us, and then parents steal it, It was this whole other thing to it. It was more abuse on more abuse, right? So they're not the ones that got injured. I was, and then I had to learn what a sociopath was as a little kid. So I already learned what it was. That's probably why I'm picking them up so quickly, because when that happened to me, I remembered his eyes. It's like a hindsight thing on that thing, too. I looked over across the room. I was roller skating, right, at the rink. And so I was roller skating at the rink, and there's this boy, and I see him, but he was staring at me really weird. And he's across the other side of the ring. We're like, going in the circle thing. And all of a sudden, I see him starting to speed skate, and this look in his eye, and I was like, oh my God, this kid is starting to chase me. And then I see him, and I started going really fast, and I was trying to get out of the ring. And then he hooked me, and he went poof, and then I went flying, and he broke my wrist. And then he rolled over it or something with his roller skate. And for nothing, there was nothing to tail that off, you guys. Like, nothing at all. But he was like an evil demon child. But then when his mom started speaking, then you got the full picture. But they didn't take the child away. They didn't arrest her. They didn't, nothing. It was her making excuses for him, going, he's just a boy. I was like, I would hope that no other boy is acting in this way. That is not a normal thing. That's a sociopath. That's somebody that they would classify as being a psychotic. And so nothing happened with them. And then later that case came up where he murdered somebody and they were trying to say self-defense. I go, no, 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 wait. I was like, wait. So then I can't speak to a court, and you, the public, don't know about it, right? You only know about it because I'm saying something. And I'm like, they let this guy become an adult, and now he's a hella F up. He's not okay today. He didn't change from that time as a kid. He didn't do any of those things. They didn't tackle it. That's the thing. So I was like, well, there's no way for us to know if we could fix that because they just let it go, right? And yeah, so you're seeing in this conduct here the enablers, and then you're also seeing a cycle of other abuses. So I don't know what happened to him as a kid to where he would be all into his own kid, but there's a lot of this going on. So the psychology to that, it just may be from interfamily sexual abuses ongoing. That, I mean, he would have to talk because in these other cases, I know that was the tail off. Like it was like, okay, they're touching their kids, right? But then prior to that, then you find out that their parents touched them. So that's what I've been picking up, or what these perpetrators are telling me, or what I'm reading online. So it's multiple, ways I'm getting that information, that it was prior to them and then to them, it was this ongoing inner family dynamic that had kept going on versus some guy just randomly, I don't know, I'm just randomly attracted to my kid, and I'm a rapist. Yeah, there's a lot more into that soup right there. Yes, and you have to question, like, why would these people be okay with the conduct? There's no amount of forgiveness and the confession thing and the glory God thing. They're so stupid. They don't get who wrote that to begin with. There's a reason why it's there. It was to cover up for men because men wrote it. So to sit there and be okay with it on any level, you need to go get your head checked and go to a therapist. And it tells me that those people will touch kids and they believe that it's okay as long as they go and confess it, and then they'll keep doing it and then just blaming the devil. There's no way you could tell me this story and me being okay with it and going, well, they said they're sorry, so we should let it go. Like, nobody should be talking like that. That's where that forgiveness thing came from. It was to make you pass off that they're criminals. And it's not saying to go violently, harm them or something like that, but they need to be held accountable and taken away from society where they don't harm other people doing those things again, because then it just creates more of them, right? Because you don't want more of them, and they're not fixing them properly on any level when they do get in trouble. That's the other thing about it. You don't want to send them off into a prison system where it's just enabling their bad behavior, and it's just like a whole bunch of them together, and they just, yeah, that's not the way that the system should be created. And on top of it, they're raping people in the prison system. So these violent offenders are harming people who are not necessarily violent offenders in the system, right? So they're just passing along their illness onto everybody else. And that shouldn't be going on either. But people are promoting that too. And I was like, hey, one day you might get in trouble for something. Maybe it's a minor thing. Maybe it's a semi-major thing. Maybe it's something to do with like theft or something stupid, right? But it's not a violent crime. But you're going to get thrown in there with those guys, and you're going to see what a true socio is through and through. The violent ones, yes. And then, but that shouldn't be going on. Like, it shouldn't be a thing, because they know they're going to put them back out into the public. And then what do they do when they go out in the public? They start doing some bullshit again. They almost always do. Even if they don't do the same crime that they did before, I'm picking them out now. Some of the ones, even celebrities that had actually gone into prison, that they're not fixed at all because they keep minimizing that violence on other people. So that's a major issue.